Welcome back to Inside Criminal Minds, the series that analyzes the actions of the FBI's BAU team. If you are new to the series, there is a link in the description down below. And first and foremost, this episode's guest star is one I personally dislike, and if not for this series, I would never talk about her. I, of course, am talking about...
My dog stepped on a bee.
Yes, Amber Heard, a waste of space in my opinion. And obviously, I side with Johnny Depp, and if this episode gets 50 likes, I will review the first 2 episodes of 21 Jump Street as an homage to Depp. With that out of the way, this episode begins with Reed and Gideon in Los Angeles to teach a law enforcement profiling class. However, they end up in an art gallery where they meet Lila, who is revealed to be an actress and begins flirting with Reed, which makes him nervous, and we even get a small taste of what the paparazzi is like harassing Lila, with Gideon getting pulled off by Lila's friend, who provides a small amount of foreshadowing by being a lesbian. And after she shoots her shot with Gideon, he grabs Reed and pulls him away. The next day, as Reed and Gideon teach the aforementioned class, a pretty blonde woman is on the phone, so she is definitely the victim. She is shot execution style and is discovered by her fiance, who, even though thinks something is wrong, decides to leave the door open, which is a little weird. However, it really doesn't matter because the unsub gets rid of him anyway, all while Gideon is talking about victimology. After the seminar, the detective offers to give Reed and Gideon a ride back to the airport. That is until the detective gets a call about the murder, which Gideon offers their expertise. Once they get on the scene, Reed looks at the door and concludes that there was no forced entry, and detective reveals the killer most likely was a messenger, and also other famous people in the area had been murdered, which prompts the detective to ask Gideon to bring the rest of his team. And while on the plane, the rest of the team go over the multiple murders, and as they arrive, they meet with the detective and go over what they're looking for, which then a manager shows up showing a potential piece of evidence that the unsub sent his client a note begging to thank the unsub, and turns out that the client is none other than Lila, which prompts the team to ask her questions, finding out that the unsub is attempting to further Lila's career by taking down the competition. Also, during the questioning, Lila reveals she received flowers every month on the 7th, which were her favorite flowers, and we never understand why the importance of the 7th comes into play. There really is no reason why it was always on the 7th. Just interesting that they never really go into why it was on the 7th. After the weight of the murders happening at her expense, she leaves with Reed closely following behind to try to console her. However, it does freak her out even more, and afterwards the team goes over the profile with the police department and explain the specifics of the killer. Afterwards, we see Lila at her shoot disregarding her manager and his wishes to continue working on the show. As he leaves, a stagehand gives Lila a note from the unsub, and the team try to convince her to leave, which she is adamantly against, and they concede letting her stay, with Gideon leaving to check on her manager and Reed and Morgan staying to protect her. On the set, she continues to flirt with Reed, with even Morgan noticing and razzing him about it. We also see why Amber was casted for this part. The director of the show just wanted to see her in a bikini. Next, we see the rest of the team witness the manager dead in his office because the unsub is threatened by him. Gideon then tells Reed, instructing him to get Lila off the set and into a safe house. Also, he tells Reed to forego telling her about her manager. While going through the manager's desk, they find revealing pictures of Lila, pointing the team to a photographer named Joe Martinez. As Reed and Lila get to her house, Reed goes over some safety measures. Meanwhile, Morgan and the detective arrive at Joe's studio, finding some evidence showing that he knows where Lila is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even finding candid pictures of Reed with Lila. This is where Morgan and the detective leave as the unsub takes a shot at them. And seriously, the unsub misses Morgan completely and hits the detective, who is almost completely shielded by the car. I mean, seriously, the unsub had a perfect shot at Morgan and missed. I guess Morgan just had better plot armor. Luckily, the detective gets medical help and is going to survive. And Gideon finds out from Garcia that Lila never mentions her favorite flowers in any of the articles written about her. Next, we see Reed admiring the art at Lila's. When Lila decides to swim, the director of this episode clearly just wants to see her in her bikini. Anyway, Reed tries to stop her, but she then tricks Reed and drags him into the pool. We also see a photographer taking candid shots of Reed and Lila. Next, Lila and Reed make out at the behest of Reed, with him even going over the psychological reasons why she feels such a connection to him. And this is where Reed kills the mood by telling Lila about her manager's death. She then obviously gets upset with Reed and storms off. Next, we see Morgan and Elle dispatch the photographer, after which Reed attempts to smooth things out with Lila, even though she is still upset with him. Gideon does attempt to take some of the blame off of Reed, and as Lila is divulging about her past, Reed sees the art from before and surmises that it contains intimate details of Lila's life, prompting them to cut it up and piece it back together, which reveals a potential suspect in an old friend of Reed's, who owned the gallery at the beginning of the episode. Gideon, Morgan, and Elle confront him in order to either clear his name or accuse him of being the unsub. He says he didn't make it, that a girl named Maggie did, and they surmise that she is the unsub. Back at the house, Lila gets a call from Maggie, with Reed calling Garcia in order to trace the phone call, and I can't believe that the stagehand that gave her the note on set was the killer. This is an excellent way of misdirection. However, during the call, Maggie alludes to their relationship, and that's when Garcia reveals that Maggie is calling from inside the house. Now Reed is clearing the house, and he makes a big mistake by searching the house with the target of the killer with him. However, Maggie gains the upper hand, holding Lila at gunpoint.
Kill the little bastard, see what I care.
And then she can accuse Johnny, and everyone lives happily ever after. I wish. But Reed talks Maggie down and is able to subdue her without firing a single shot, though she does beg for death, and Reed refuses, showing a great deal of character. The next day, Reed and Lila are trying to gain some closure, with his team and her team attempting to pry them away from each other. And back at FBI headquarters, Morgan and Reed decompress after this case, with Morgan joking with Reed about Lila, and they have an interesting heart-to-heart about their relationships. This episode used to be one of my favorites. It gave Reed some character development and strengthened his dynamic with Morgan, but it loses so many points because of Amber Heard. And I know she wasn't that way at the time, but it is hard to watch this episode and not think about Johnny and what she did to him. Besides that, it is an actually good episode. Thank you for watching. If you want to see the trials and tribulations of a spy on the outskirts of the intelligence community, watch my other series, Burned Notice, link in the description. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe.